Hi, good evening, and welcome to another episode of the Stemmy Conversations podcast. I am your host, Bradley Donner, and alongside me is my co host, Miss Stephanie Simon. Today we have a guest, Dr. Daricia Wilkinson. Dr. Wilkinson is a UX researcher with focus on online safety, trustworthy design, recommender systems, and user experience. She is also a postdoctoral researcher in the FATE group. FATE is an acronym which means Fairness, Accountability, Transparency, and Ethics in Artificial Intelligence at Microsoft Research. Dr. Wilkinson, welcome to the STEM Conversations podcast.
So, Dr. Wilkinson, what career did you pursue? Like, if you could tell us a bit more about it.
Yeah, sure. So I am originally from St. Kitts and Nevis, and I started school. It's interesting because I went to sixth form, which is like to do your CAPE, to do the A level, and I didn't really, I wasn't sure like what I wanted to do. I was pretty good at accounting, so I was like, let me just apply to UE and UVI and see how that goes. So that was the path that I was considering. And I took a year off to actually just work. So I was doing some work in insurance, which again has nothing to do with what I'm doing now. But there was just one day there was some issue like with the computer network, and we had to bring a guy in from the IT department. I was like, man, like this is so cool, like the fact that everything is like constantly changing and evolving with tech, and like regardless to like what industry that you're in, tech is always going to be there. So I was like, okay, like let me switch gears, and I applied to UVI, and that's actually how I learned about research in general, because before then I didn't even know what a PhD was. So it was a bit of a learning experience, and I would not necessarily say that this was clear cut. This was my idea from the beginning. It was a lot of learning along the way.
Okay. Awesome. Over to you, Brad.
All right. How would you describe, can you describe a day in your life as a UX researcher? What is it like?
Oh, yeah, sure. That's actually a pretty excellent question. So, I am currently working as a postdoc researcher in Microsoft Research here in New York. And it's really fantastic. I love it for multiple reasons. One, I have the opportunity to just kind of explore whatever topics I find like valuable or impactful. On a daily basis, I'm either working on one of my projects that I'm leading, or I am reaching out to collaborators. So that could be persons within the company or persons like outside of the company. And we're really just tackling problems that um, involve tech, but also like at the intersection of like more socio-technical aspects. So making sure that things that are available for people, that they're truly safe, they're built responsibly, and they just make sense.
All right, thank you for that response. My other question is, how is STEM and or ICT integrated into your career?
Well, from the get-go, it's interesting. I like the idea of that question because it's still a bit broad. So STEM in general has always been pretty much embedded in everything that I did. So from undergrad, my first degree was information systems and technology. So that was like a combination of like business and computer science. But even then, I was really interested in STEM in general. So not just like that little T, even though I'm in tech. So a lot of the things that I would do, like I started an innovation and entrepreneurship club at the University of the Virgin Islands. And that included so many different people. So not just persons in technology, but a lot of engineering folks. We had folks who were interested in the arts, so more like STEAM or not just STEM. I think like it was really interesting because we ended up working. One of the projects that I really like, we ended up working on building prosthetics for persons within the community. So 3D printed prosthetics. So we actually went, oh, we raised money and we got funding for like a 3D printer. We actually ended up reaching out to some folks who were doing some really cool stuff, like ended up seeing like how you actually build and develop prototypes for persons who might need like different limbs. So persons who specifically had um, needed prosthetics for their arms. And that's just cool, you know, like coming from somebody who had like more like a business tech standpoint and dealing with engineering. I think like it's really important for persons like within STEM to branch out as well. So not just if you're in engineering, stick primarily with folks in engineering, but looking to see like how you could combine like the forces from different disciplines.
I love that response.
Yes, pretty
It
diverse.
gives diversity and innovation. Yes, I like
Yes.
that. All
Okay.
right, open to the questions now.
Yeah. So I heard earlier that you were into like the business aspect of stuff. So my question is, if you weren't into the tech or the STEM field, what other field you would have chosen and why?
So this is going to be very random, but if I wasn't in tech, oh gosh, I've never said this out loud. So it's one of two things.
Mm.
So I would have either been an event planner because I just love the idea of like setting up things for like a birthday party and just dealing with the decor and bringing like just a very beautiful experience to people on days that are really important to them. I think that would have been like a fantastic thing to do, but I'm super busy, so that would have been like a different life. It's either that very random. Like I always wanted to have a mango cart for some reason. Like I just think the idea of just selling mangoes is it's very random, but something that I would have taken a lot of pride in.
Awesome. And since you mentioned mango, I start thinking, where could I go and get some mangoes right now?
See, it's just something that's needed. It's always in demand. It would have been a booming business.
Right. Okay, cool. My next question is, what are some of the requirements to pursue the career of being a UX designer?
Yeah, okay. So in the field of user experience, I think in the last 5 to 10 years, it has evolved so much. So you could be a UX designer, which is primarily making sure that how you interact with a particular platform, or app, or interface, that it makes sense and it's aesthetically pleasing, like people could actually use it. Or you could be like on the UX research side, which is more so, I think it's like a combination of like computer science and psychology. So it's really looking at like attitudes and behaviors and how people interact online. And I think like it's incredibly fascinating. Now, to get into that, you could go different routes. Right now, there are many options for persons. So even if persons don't necessarily go like the traditional route, like going to like a 4 year college, there are different like boot camps and just trainings from I think like other walks of life that are helpful for persons. And I've seen persons like get those types of roles with just that. Now, if you want to be like more so like you very much focus on like the research aspect of it, most persons, most jobs in those roles would require degrees. Just because like even right now, like I'm a postdoctoral researcher. So that means like I, I have to have that doctoral degree in order to even qualify for the role. So it's considerations for that. And depending on which level you are, of course, like that comes with like additional requirements in terms of like responsibilities, but also like for the pay as well.
Okay,
All
thank you
right,
so much for that.
that was a detailed response. I like that. So, how has your journey been so far?
Oh boy. Oh, that's the hard questions, man. I'm not gonna lie, it has been challenging and challenging on like different fronts. Because let's keep in mind this is 2023. My goodness, 2023, and I started UVI, my bachelor's degree in 2013. I finished the PhD last year, and man, I could write a book and all the things that I would have faced. So keep in mind, I would have gone through like the pandemic, a lot of things happening like in my personal life, and it definitely was challenging, like being like a minority going to like a predominantly white institution coming from UVI, which is like the only HBCU, which let me clarify. So that's the only historically Black college university that's located in the Caribbean. You know, when you're in the Caribbean, you don't necessarily think about like your race if you're Black, because that's typically like the demographics, like everyone around you is Black. So I didn't actually realize I was Black until I came to the US. So that in itself, like the culture shock, dealing with that, and over the years, like this being like a first generation scholar, where like I'm like one of the first in my family to like really pursue college, especially like being on this particular level, like pursuing the PhD. So it was a lot of learning on the fly, a lot of like learning how to build a community, seek other persons around you so you could build a support system, and also just figuring out like how to do a PhD. Because I'm telling you, like a PhD has little to do with intelligence, but a whole lot to do with perseverance and will, because it will test you for sure.
Wow. Another detailed response.
Yeah, and I'm glad she talked about the PhD part because I thought it was just about the theory part alone, but it really pushes you to the limit. So, yeah.
My other question is, what are some challenges you would have faced in your journey, whether at school or at work?
Yeah, I think one of the hardest challenges I probably dealt with was when I was actually finishing up the dissertation. So typically what the timeline is for a PhD, you start and it's generally anywhere from 4 to 6 years, and average people finish about 5 years. So like, but when you reach like year 3, year 2, around there, you're just trying to figure out like what your actual topic would be, and like this has to be novel. You know, this has to be something that hasn't been done before. So it's a lot of pressure figuring that out. So I had two routes. So I had one option which like I was doing already before, and I was like, yeah, this is cool. I feel like it's impactful. But then I also wanted to explore online safety, and specifically thinking about like how that impacts communities that typically don't get involved like in the design process, like in tech, like people in the Caribbean. So I actually decided, yeah, I had a conversation with my advisor, and shout out to my advisor because he's absolutely the best, like the most supportive person ever. And if there's anyone out there who's interested in pursuing a PhD, your advisor is the most important decision that you will make. Like having someone who will be in your corner is critical. So he was frank with me, and he was like, like you should definitely do like whatever you're passionate about. And so grateful he was open to me kind of changing gears, because I ended up shifting my entire dissertation. Because at that time, like I was doing everything solely based on like recommender systems. So I kind of switched gears and kind of look at like the online safety when it comes to like algorithms, and especially for like non-Western context. So looking specifically and focusing my whole dissertation on the Caribbean. So I decided I'm gonna do this. Started off great. I ended up getting like the Facebook fellowship, which is like huge, because I think that year they had like applications for like definitely over 1,000 people, and they only selected like 30. 20 something around. Like it's very prestigious, very selective. So I was like, fantastic. Things are picking off. Then boom, pandemic. Pandemic hits, and no, I'm like, okay, like how am I gonna collect surveys? And like I had to do things on the ground because like it's in the Caribbean and it's not like how I'm gonna reach these people. And like everybody's like locked in their houses. Like, how is this gonna happen? So no, I'm like frantically figuring things out, and super grateful for persons in the Caribbean. Like they're saying like, oh yeah, like we small but we talawa. Yeah, props, shout out to my Caribbean people for making this happen. Like all these people like came together, shared the surveys. Everybody came together from like different islands. I actually had someone in Guyana who was incredibly helpful. Like she had a company that did like surveys and stuff. And I was like, girl, like I'm working on a smaller budget and I just really need this done so I could really just push this forward. I think it's important. And she was like, this is important for Caribbean people and like getting their voice out there. So I'm gonna make this happen for you. And she rallied with me. And I'm grateful for like all the Caribbean people who rallied with me too, because that was a major challenge and something that I wasn't really sure like how it was gonna work out. But I'm really glad and super grateful for all the Caribbean people who helped this happen.
That is amazing. And thank you so much for the tip about if somebody they want to pursue a PhD. It is really thoughtful because they may have some persons out there and they're saying, nah, I don't want to do this anymore. So
Mm.
I'm glad that you shed some light on that part. Um, my question for you is, what does success look like for you? Or how do you know you would have like meet this goal or met this goal?
Yeah, that's like super personal and something I think people need to reflect on. And I think my goal of my definition of success definitely changed like after the pandemic. During that time, I would have thought very deeply about like how I want my life to be. I think being like an immigrant like from the Caribbean, you have you have a lot of goals. Like you want to be able to make sure that like you're successful in the sense of like you're making your family proud, and also that you're making enough money to like also help like your family and achieve some of the goals that like just things that you never had in life. Um, but after especially the pandemic, and it put things in perspective. So one of the things that's important for me is that I'm at peace, because a lot of times like you endeavor to really go out here and you go in these like really big countries, you end up working in like corporate America, just like the corporate world in general, and it is not easy. Especially knowing how to navigate and stuff. So like finding a working environment that is like truly supportive. Like I really love like the persons like in my group there, like amazing set of people. So finding like an environment that's peaceful, but also like living in a community where like I feel like I could have support, because where I went to school, like in Clemson, I felt like it's a great college town. It's a great college town because it's small and there's literally nothing else around it. So you have no excuse rather but to study because there's nothing else going on. But I think like for me, like I wanted to live in a place where, like I could easily go back home if I really need to fly back home really quickly. And also like I could get Caribbean food. So just like really thinking about like what would bring me joy, what would bring me peace, because at the end of the day, although like you might have like all of these accomplishments on paper, when you go into your house, you close that door, like having your peace and a sense of freedom and stability and ensuring that your environment is supporting your mental health above everything, those are the things that take priority.
Mm. Peace is key.
Yeah.
I would say, enjoy the responses so far. The quote that she said, "We smile with Taloa." I've heard my mentor, Dr. Khalil, use that quote many times, and it really does, I would say, resonate with me. And I love the fact that you say peace, Because oftentimes, sometimes you find that people define success with money or maybe getting a few awards or so forth.
Yeah, trust me, I have seen a lot of folks who are making six figures and they are miserable. At the end of the day, you need to make sure that you're happy and that you have your health.
All right. So I have one more question left. What advice would you give to the youths out there that would want to pursue this field?
Yeah, I would say don't be afraid. I think right now, we're definitely in the information age, but also there's just everything available to you. Like it's not like when I started. I think like when I started, it was like a lot of figuring things out, and maybe like you might find a YouTube channel that might have information, but man, like even right now, like companies like Bing, Google, like everybody is even trying to like revolutionize how we search online, and a lot of the options are out there to just learn. Like there are a lot of free certificates that you could take, like if you're really into it, and the information is out there. So just start. And I would also say, like, if you find, especially, I believe like kids who are younger, if you find like there are summer camps, like summer tech camps, there are a couple of them that I see people advertising. Go and do that. Go and do that. Because you will never know if you truly love something until like, you get the opportunity to do it. And I think like with tech, like it's so incredibly diverse because like, you could do robotics, you could go work for Tesla and build like self-driving cars, and there are just like so many different options like within tech itself. Nevertheless, STEAM and STEM. So go out there and literally try everything.
Awesome. Thank you very much for those responses.
Thank
And
you.
I do endorse what she says. You can utilize various online resources. I've done it before, and it gave me insight into the tech field. So, Dr. Daricia, thank you for sharing with us today. You dropped some gems that I think even Steph and I
Mm,
learned a lot. We
yes,
did
indeed.
a lot.
Yeah, thank you
Thank you.
for having me.
Uh, for our audience, be sure to follow us on social media. That is on Facebook and Instagram at Stemmy.conversations and the major podcast insights, Anchor, Apple and Google Podcast. There's digital school allowed, and you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. Do have a great evening.